Mission, we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have both sides, though, from CH4Locks, and that's a video of how it looks like Elon. They say, Obama, Clinton, they all did the Nazi salute as well, but it looks like they've raised their hands a little differently. They said, I personally don't really buy it. If you want to think Elon did a Nazi salute, you can say you think he did a Nazi salute. I really don't care. He might have just been trolling. He might have been accidental. I really don't care. Can people move on to something else? It's all been Trump, Hitler, Nazis for every day the past 10 fucking years, and it's turned me into the fucking Joker. And that's my thoughts on that issue. The next we have federal judge temporarily blocks Trump's birthright censorship order from Lemon Limelight. From the Washington Post, federal judge temporarily blocks Trump's birthright censorship order. A federal judge on Thursday issued a 2-week restraining order blocking the Trump administration from moving forward on an effort to end birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants and foreign visitors, calling the directive blatantly unconstitutional. U.S. District Court John C. Coffenhauer's decision, which applies nationwide, came in response to a lawsuit from a coalition of states, Washington, Arizona, Illinois, and Oregon, that argued that the White House executive order, which President Donald Trump signed Monday, violates the 14th Amendment. Coffenhauer was skeptical throughout the brief hearing before issuing his ruling from the bench, telling Justice Department lawyers that the executive order boggles the mind, according to the Associated Press. And yeah, I personally don't really care for the state being involved in the definition of citizenship as a whole, so I personally don't think the state should be determining who and who isn't a citizen, because, citizenship is all just relative. The government can say anyone that wants to is a citizen, and yeah, I personally don't think the government should be involved at all. I think that's very much the libertarian position. Then we have Mercy. Watch Bishop Marianne Edgar Budd's sermon challenging Trump at inaugural service from Democracy Now! On YouTube by CDN history student. And yeah, I think it's interesting how these people, they usually say, we hate Christianity, wish it were illegal, but then suddenly one of these preacher uses the religion to push progressive dogma, and suddenly it's heckin' wholesome. And yeah, it just goes to show you how people they don't really care about anything. They don't have any values besides pushing their dogma. And yeah, they always say, I hate political grandstanding in the church, but when their side does it, it's suddenly completely fine. And that just goes to show you the only standards that most people have are double. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have all federal agencies ordered to terminate remote work, ideally within 30 days. From U.S. agencies wasting billions on empty offices on various RTO General says, from arstechnica.com by CH4Lux, and that's crosspost from the technology subreddit. And yeah, I personally do think the government should force its federal workers to work in the office. I don't think working from home is as effective as going into the office, but that being said, I don't want the government to be effective, so I personally don't think they should have any federal workers at all. I would get rid of all the federal agencies to begin with. But that being said, if the agencies do want them to return to the office, they should be able to force them to do so. As you're not forced to work for the government. It's a free association thing. They should be able to make whatever rules they want if they want to work for them. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have excluding Indians. Trump admin questions Native Americans' birthright citizenship in court. I did not see that one coming, in parentheses from Salon.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I think this might just be more grandstanding on Trump's part, but they're going to market everything Trump does is the worst thing ever, so you just gotta ignore him. It just, the subreddit's really just gone downhill since he's been inaugurated. It was really just Orange Man bad before he was even the president back during Biden's term. Now it's really just Orange Man bad. He's did this before Terry Bossy, and yeah, if they want to complain about him, they should be free to do so. But with that being said, they only care because it's the TV tells them to care, and it's against their team rather than for their team. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have House Republican introduces amendment allowing Trump to run for third term, but not Obama, from Mediaite.com by CH4Locks, and that's crosspost from the News of the Stupid subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think that's just more political grandstanding. I don't think it has any chance of passing. The Constitution hasn't been amended in 30 years, so I definitely don't think, I think even most of his supporters are tired of the whole Trump circle jerk at this point, since it's been going on for a decade. But yeah, I guess, we'll see what happens there. I personally don't think it has any chance of passing. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Costco won't join DEI backlash. Why shareholders rejected anti-woke proposal from finance.io.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't think corporations should be doing DEI. But that being said, I think if a private corporation wants to do DEI, I think it should be able to do so. Hopefully, it backfires on them, but we'll see what happens. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have congratulations on voting for lower taxes, but from CH4 Locks, and says Trump's tax plan is out. So unless you make $300,000 or more, your taxes are going to go up. How are you feeling about the price of those eggs? And yeah, that's just another orange man bad. I personally don't care for tax increases or taxes at all, but ultimately, they'll always find a way to screw you over with them, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Donald Trump and fiery call of Denmark's Prime Minister over Greenland by Baton 13. That's crosswords from the geopolitics subreddit from the Financial Times. And yeah, I personally don't really care for Donald Trump at all and his insufferable personality that's seemingly rubbed off on everyone else at this point. But, ultimately, if he wants to be insufferable on a call about Greenland, that's his prerogative. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump to sign executive order to fundamentally change or get rid of FEMA from Reuters.com by Donald G. And yeah, I personally don't really care for FEMA or any other government agencies. FEMA, time and time again, it's failed. It failed during Katrina. It failed during the Hurricane Helene. And yeah, I personally would get rid of FEMA and just have, private enterprises try and save people instead, rather than have the government save people, because the government seems to do everything it does incompetently, and that includes FEMA. So I would say this is one of the Trump positions I would agree with. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump Team Red Media against shopping with your wife now, weirder by the day, from Donald Key, and that's crosswords from the Facepalm subreddit, from the Republicans Against Trump Twitter account. Fox News' Jesse Waters criticizing Doug Emhoff for going grocery shopping with Kamala Harris. What kind of husband goes grocery shopping with his wife? And yeah, that's just kind of, people make issues out of everything these days. It looks like that's on both that seems to be true throughout the political spectrum. And it's getting really tiring, especially when everything's seemingly constant outrage these days. Eventually, you just grow numb to it, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the North Carolina Supreme Court is coming dangerously close to stealing an election from Slate.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't really care about who gets elected to what. But if it was the U.S. Supreme Court trying to steal the 2024 presidential election, these guys would be cheering them on. So ultimately believe whatever you want about whatever elections you want to, but don't be surprised when your side gets screwed over by the courts. And yeah, I personally just think we gotta get rid of elections entirely, get rid of the courts entirely. I think they're all forced collectivism. Well, what people need to do is voluntary collectivism rather than forced collectivism. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have police union that endorsed Trump last January 6 pardons from Axios.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I think it's interesting. Reddit loves saying, "Oh, all cops are bastards," but they say, "Oh, the police union was right here because they're taking an anti-Trump position." It's just they have no values other than in-group and out-group, anti-Trump, pro-Trump. And yeah, I personally don't care for police or unions. I think they're both very authoritarian, forced collectivism, especially police more so, since people are forced to obey the police. People aren't forced to a union or not. But yeah, I definitely don't care for either of those. So yeah, on January 6th, I think if it's interesting. They say, "Oh, we hate the lot of leftists go, we hate the police," but suddenly the January 6th cops, they're suddenly, since they fought the in-group, they're the out-group rather than the in-group, they're suddenly the best thing ever. So yeah, I personally don't really care for a lot of the January 6th pardons. I think a lot of people might have been unscrupulous characters, but if Trump wants to pardon them, I think he should be able to, because it might have been a setup all to begin with, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have McArdle has resigned his Libertarian Party chair from Dr. Who 07. That's crosswords from the Libertarian Party USA subreddit. And yeah, I thought her tenure was kind of meh. I personally can see a libertarian argument for trying to influence one of the branches of the Uniparty, but that doesn't mean you have to be up Trump's ass and sucking his cock. And yeah, that's my thoughts there. Also, I do think her leadership was rather grifty with the RFK stuff, but politics is kind of inherently grift, so I'm going to be less hard on her for that. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Arkansas bill would limit local government's control on rent deposit fees from nwahomepage.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I personally don't really. I'm glad that the government's limiting control on rent and deposit fees. You know, you could have the argument, oh, the local government should have control about for that rather than the state government. But you know, I definitely do think less government is good, regardless of what level of government's telling you to do it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have finally, people are being hired for merit. People like Hezgazif, Noam, RFK Jr., Gavin McMahon. What a fucking joke from Hanson Miles. And yeah, you know, I personally don't really care for, you know, I think some of those people are better than, you know, I think a lot of Trump's more outsider picks are probably the better ones. But yeah, you know, personally, the hiring process, you know, it's never been about merit really. It's always been more who you know than what you know. And yeah, that's my thoughts there. You know, I personally think people should be able to hire whatever they want to. We shouldn't have any hiring laws in the first place. You know, if you know, I think if you don't want to hire someone for any reason, you should be able to do so. And I think that's freedom of association. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Secretary of Defense shouldn't be political from CH4Locks, and that's crosswords from the r/military subreddit. And yeah, I would say the Secretary of Defense, along with all the cabinet secretaries, are inherently political. You know, I definitely think Hexif is probably one of Trump's better picks, being one of the more outsider picks. But yeah, you know, if you don't want to like him, I don't think you should be forced to like him. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Secret Service descended upon elementary school to look for a student who posted an anti-Trump video from CH4Locks, and that's cross-post from the March Against Nazis subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that, but ultimately the government will justify whatever authoritarianism wants to justify, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Then we have Trump's deportation flights carrying just 80 migrants cost eye-watering amount. And for the NewYork.com, that's from CH4Locks, and that's cross-post from the Trump virus subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't really care for this stunt, and how you know it's just kind of just throwing money away, but both parties are going to piss money away in the end, so I don't think it really matters too much. I think it's just, you know, it's people just want the you know, a good images to show that they look effective. Well, reality, you know, Molly Tibbetts, you know, people always say Laken Riley got murdered by an illegal during Biden's term. Well, Molly Tibbetts got murdered by an illegal during Trump's first term. So sometimes, you know, I think the whole illegal immigration thing, you know, they might have good intentions, but you know, people are still going to get murdered by unscrupulous characters regardless of what happens, regardless of how authoritarian the government is, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And then we have Donald Trump fires independent inspectors general at 17 federal agencies from news.io.com by Plasman Ferdy. And yeah, I personally don't really care for any federal bureaucrats, so you know, I do think this is good. At least he's firing some government workers. And yeah, this is probably never one of the policies I would agree with him on. Try and fire as many government workers as possible, but you know, hopefully he won't just replace them with loyal sycophants to him. But that's probably what's going to end up happening. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. So we're going to wrap up there. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.